Heavy footsteps drummed throughout the Carousel city barracks as dozens of soldiers marched through in preparation for war. It was a war none of them wanted, yet they heeded the call for glory. Carousel was founded nearly 3 centuries prior, built upon the remnants of an ancient civilization. Flanked either side by mountains, it stood as the only line of defense between the Icilian Empire of the east and the barbarian clans of Ultharos to the west. Every few decades, the Ultharians would surmount a joint effort to assault Carousel in an effort to break down the city gates to get to the vast stretches of land that lay beyond, ripe for the picking. And each attempt, they would fail to do so much as scratch the mighty walls barring entry. But a city's walls are only as strong as the soldiers that protect them, and unfortunately, not every soldier is suited for conflict. Bertrand cursed as his hand slipped yet again while sharpening his longsword. At least this time he didn't open up any new wounds on his hands. He stretched his bandaged fingers before picking up the dropped whetstone. Just like everyone else, his hair was tucked neatly away beneath a studded leather cap, only revealing a light brown ponytail trailing down his back. He tried to find familiar faces amongst the crowd of gambesons and spearheads, but just like him, most of the regiment was comprised of last-minute recruits, as the higher-ups called them. Draftees would be a more suitable word. Cannon fodder, an even better one. A sergeant whose name Bertrand already forgot came barging through the sea of soldiers. "Get in line, all of you! It's last call before the gates closed! Move it! Move it!" He rushed soldiers into cramped corridors, kicking others that tried to stand off to the sides in hopes they would be forgotten. He came up to Bertrand and slapped the stone out of his hand. "What you still sharpening that for, recruit? Get your arse in line!" Bertrand was forced onto his feet. "Sir, please, I shouldn't be here." "Course you ain't supposed to be here. You're supposed to be out in the front lines." I'm a baker. I can't fight or sharpen swords or..." "Who you talking to, worm?" the sergeant screamed. Other draftees shied away from the horn with legs. "Sorry, sir. I'm a baker. "That's more like it." He shoved Bertrand into the funneling bodies. "Get out there and make the missus proud." "Won't have one," Bertrand mumbled as he filed in line with the rest of the fodder. "Won't get the chance if none of us live." "You're telling me," a stranger said, matching pace as they marched down through the barracks corridors. "Met my sweetheart right before getting sent to die. What a joke, am I right?" Bertrand noticed the man also had a longsword. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ike. Yours?" "Bertrand." They finally made their way out to a cracked stone courtyard made of similar stones as the walls. Grass blades poked their way through the fractured slates. In front of them, the regiment was lining up to march through one of the 2 gates of Carousel's western walls. "Why do the rest of us have to get wrapped up in this turmoil? I'm a baker, for virtue's sake, not a fighter." "Can't say I'm much else than a handyman." Ike rapped his sword on the ground a few times. "But I'd like to stick around to be something more." "Me too." Bertrand took off his cap, scratching his sweltering scalp. "Father just passed away, left me with the title to his land. Was planning to sell it off to start a shop, but it might go right back to my mother." "You bake good bread?" Ike asked. Pretty good if I do say so myself. I'll bake better when I can get better ingredients. Maybe some new pans and some wood that doesn't smell like it came from a pig farm if I can help it." Ike took a big whiff. I can smell it now. Freshly baked bread. Always liked a nice rye." The massive rectangular gates groaned open outward to reveal fields of pale green grass. I know a good place outside the city southeast where I can get some nice maple wood. Might fare better than swine logs." Bertrand laughed. "When this is over, if you get me that wood, I'll give you the first batch I bake." "The whole thing?" Ike asked incredulously. "Whole thing." Ike tipped his leather cap. "Very kind of you, Bertrand. It's a deal, then." He held out his arm. Bertrand put his headgear back on and braced forearms with his new comrade. As they did, Bertrand felt this moment become a memory. One that would be short-lived, yet his mind would cling to it for who knows how long. Gazing into Ike's deep brown eyes, Bertrand found himself tossed around in a daze. He could hear the sounds of marching around him. Drum beats echoed across the ghostly landscape, matching with anguished cries from fallen soldiers, enemies and kinsmen alike. Bertrand could not take his eyes away. He wanted so desperately for this moment to last, but something told him it already ended. Sparks of flames leaped from somewhere he could not see. A strange fog blew in, clouding his vision. The music of steel against iron rang like cursed church bells upon dreary days. Deep chills crept up into his heartbeat. Everything slowed to a crawl. Bertrand screamed. Trying to sit up, he found the act agonizing. He convulsed on the ground, blood burning with an arctic sear. Once the pain died down ever so slightly, he rolled onto his side. Ike no longer stood in front of him. Bertrand's view was filled with trails of ethereal steam rising. He was in a field of pale grass, that much was certain. He didn't remember marching down to it, nor did he remember so many bodies. Corpses covered in armor from both sides littered the battlefield, all color lost from their adornments. Now they were just the nameless dead scattered outside Carousel's walls. Bertrand craned his neck. Above, the sky changed from lightly cloudy to a tangible mass of gray. A mess of otherworldly light and clouds thrashed endlessly against one another. He grunted and rose to his knees. "Where's Ike? Where's anyone?"
"Peace, warrior."
Bertrand stumbled away from the chaotic voice. A man nearly 7 feet tall stood behind him, suited with a ghastly assortment of armor. Or pieces of armor. Every inch of its body was covered by what appeared to be different pieces of various defensive gear. Chest plates split in two, each half a different kind of metal. Straps were offset and unmatching. Splints meshed together with strands of poorly worked leather. Most notably, the helmet was of fine fashion, at least compared to the rest of the garb. Shards melded together to form the headpiece covering everything except the areas around the mouth and eyes, which were tinted in a slightly luminous blue instead of flesh. Bertrand squinted, trying to see if this thing was a mere illusion. "What are you?"
"At ease. You may refer to me as Dreg."
The thing took a few steps toward him. Whatever it was, it left behind footprints of a turquoise haze.
"Stand down, Bertrand, son of Nigel."
"How do you know my name?"
"I know the names of every fallen soldier."
It spoke as if several people combined their voices into a scrambled chorus. White, fiery eyes burned their way straight through to the soul.
"As I do know the names of their forebearers and their kin before them. You fought bravely, Bertrand, baker of bread, but I'm afraid your time is drawing near."
"Time? What time?" Bertrand forced his legs to stand. Blood leaked through his gambeson around his right thigh. I've got plenty of time. I need to head back now that the fighting is over." He shambled back toward Carousel's cold walls, which took a ghostly hue. "I have to bake some wonderful rye for Ike."
"Ike Ukur?"
The thing spoke.
"He was defeated fighting along with your brethren. Felled 2 Ultharians before succumbing to a spear running through him. Broke past the 4th rib."
"What? No, I just saw him. He should be heading back there as well."
"Bertrand."
The thing moved in front of the dying baker.
"He's gone. It's over."
Bertrand took a few deep gasps, cold reality setting in. "What's going on then? If I'm dead, then what's all this? How come I'm still here? What are you?"
"Not many who've met me alive speak of me, but those who have typically refer to me as a revenant. A remnant, a ghost, but more so I prefer myself an eidolon of combat, of war."
You're not a virtue?" Bertrand knew about the 5 virtues and their representative forms in the mortal realms, but none of them matched this monstrosity.
"Neither virtue nor god.
Dreg spread his arms.
A mere spirit of battle. the end of conflict incarnate, heralding those passing through the aftermath, a collector of fallen warriors.
It pointed to a standing body not 100 feet away. Another Dreg was speaking to a carousel recruit. Now Pertrin could see them. Hordes of Dregs leading risen militiamen through the aftermath. Occasionally a pair would dissipate into a spiritual form, floating upwards, vanishing once they reached the monochrome maelstrom. Pertrin's breath felt uncomfortably hot. Ache from the wound upon his leg flared with the grim realization that he was mortally wounded. "Am I dead?" he asked Dreg. Dreg approached, lightly touching the conscript, sending a wave of what felt like shattering glass rippling through Pertrin.
Nearly there, I think. Shame, Pertrin, crafter of baked goods. Ike would have wanted you to live on.
Did he tell you that before he left? Dreg nodded. Pertrin's eyes widened. Wait, you said I'm nearly dead.
Correct.
So there's a chance I can live? Dreg cocked his head.
A slight one. A chance so slight that I would not even bet on it.
But there's a chance. Pertrin shoved a finger at his escort to the afterlife. A chance so small that I will bet on it.
Interesting.
Dreg circled Pertrin with a new spark of light in his eyes. Flickers of ghostly blue flames spread forth from them.
Let me put it this way, soldier.
His voice suddenly became more clear, more cemented than the chorus it was before.
That all depends on you.
Me? Well, of course I want to live.
But how much?
Dreg spread out his arms, gesturing to the field of corpses.
I lead fallen warriors to their place in the worlds beyond. I do not save those from failing in battle so that they may fight the good fight yet again.
So you're gonna let me die? Pertrin was appalled at the idea.
I'm asking how much you desire your future.
I mean,
what makes you deserve it more than any of these brave souls who fought for their lives, for the lives of their nation?
I don't know, Pertrin admitted. But I want my life back so badly. Everything was going so well for it to end too soon because of a conflict that I'm not a part of.
Was it not going well for your other countrymen? Are you not part of defending your lands from invaders just as much as they are? Claiming ignorance of your part in protecting your home is a grave lack of vision.
I was innocent! Pertrin shouted. I can't fight! I can't man the battlements! I can only make bread! Is it so much to ask for a peaceful life, dirtying my hands with flour rather than blood?
It is worth much more than you know, soldier.
Dreg's eyes were spilling forth smoke of a turquoise hue.
Granted, a price that you have already paid, but one you seem to not appreciate paying for. Yet you do burn a bright flame, even in your waning moments. So I ask again.
Dreg flicked his right arm outwards. Metal splinters flew from blades of fallen soldiers. Chips from axe edges, sword tips, spearheads, all conglomerated into a sword spanning from his hand. An executioner's sword of unreasonable size formed out of countless weapon shards. The weapons of Icilian soldiers and their enemies. At the end of the day, Pertrin could see no difference between them.
How much do you desire your future?
Pertrin, seeing the malice in the Revenant's eyes, turned and ran, ignoring the searing pain from his thigh. Stay away from me!
You cannot run from death, Pertrin.
Dreg's forms shifted through the air in a blur of blue and black smoke, reappearing near feet away from his target. You said it yourself, that you are not a god. Pertrin snatched a shield from a corpse's clutch. You are not death! Raising the shield, he charged past Dreg, who swung a mighty blow at him. In a flash of white, the shield was gone, splintered into 1,000 pieces, which now lay scattered amongst the dead. But Pertrin kept running, paying no heed to the terrifying ghost in blue that was chasing him down, or the agonizing pain rising from his wound. Dreg's voice emanated from inside Pertrin's head.
What makes you think that you deserve to live more than anyone else who has already passed amongst this field of battle? What right to life do you have that's greater than theirs?
Pertrin kept running, keeping one eye on Dreg and the other on the castle walls looming out in front of him. None, but I will fight for it.
Then fight!
Dreg appeared in front of Pertrin once more, making a swing for the neck. Pertrin dropped to the ground, feeling the horrendous mess of a sword pass above him. He scrambled to grab something, anything that would protect him from a second attack. A battle axe with a splintered handle would fare far better than his arms. Looking up, he saw Dreg reel back for another swing. Rolling out of the way, Pertrin saw the sword whip by, wedging itself into the soft dirt. Screaming something halfway between a cry of terror and of battle, he threw the broken axe at Dreg. Even though it wore armor, the axe ledged itself into the Revenant's abdomen. Releasing the sword, Dreg stepped back, keeping an eye on Pertrin.
You fight like your life depends on it. But is it enough?
Pertrin didn't want to find out. All he was trying to do was make it back inside Carousel. He wanted to go home, or to his father's property, or to the scummiest tavern he could find. It didn't matter. He just wanted all this to end, and for life to go on. A hard thing to want when an eidolon of battle constantly approached, taking the occasional swing in an attempt to end things faster. But each time Pertrin would find some sort of weapon or shield or piece of tattered armor to put between himself and encroaching death. Carousel was in reach, and as Pertrin crossed the threshold of its yawning gates, he thought for a moment that he had won. That maybe Dreg would leave him alone. That everything could go back to normal.
Keep fighting, soldier.
Dreg appeared from a doorway into one of the garrisons.
First and last rule of living.
Pertrin kept running, even though it felt like his leg was going to fall off at any moment. It was a miracle he hadn't yet tripped on his own blood. Let me live! Please! I'll do anything! Dreg kept vanishing, only to reform under archways, inside windows, within dark confines of alleyways. There were more of them now, all speaking in sync with different voices resonating from each ancient stone of Carousel.
Hardly anyone puts in any work to live, Pertrin, but all are eager to stave off death.
No longer did Dreg swing at Pertrin. He just followed the dying warrior with his many forms, chasing down the prey that got away. Pertrin followed his usual way home, past the Harlington Bazaar where he bought Haley a bouquet of flowers. Underneath the hanging gardens of the Haven arches, paying no heed to avoid bleeding on the blooming tulips and budding bushes. All he had to do now was stumble around the Church of the Five Ways and he'd be home.
Many don't get to come home from war, Pertrin.
3 dregs wearing different tatters of armor strolled down the dark road to Pertrin's home.
Yet they dream of making it through unscathed.
A voice eerily similar to Ike's came from the center one. How big do you dream? Screaming, Pertrin tripped, stumbling off toward the red-roofed church. His right leg started to give out. He hobbled through the entrance and shambled out the back. If he could call upon a surge of strength, perhaps he could make it over the iron fence. Out in the cemetery, he could see the skies dim. Less spirits were making their way to the afterlife, hopefully leaving Pertrin behind.
I'm impressed, warrior of Carousel.
Dreg stepped out from behind a cracked, pale monolith, wielding a new executioner's sword.
Whether through luck or sheer will, you have evaded this assault. Heed a warning, if you listen.
What? Pertrin shouted, dropping to the ground. He couldn't feel his leg anymore. What is it? What do you warn me of? Tears formed behind his terrified eyes as he watched the entity looming over him.
Take this chance and live life to the fullest. For you. For Ike.
Then, Dreg lifted its weapon and sliced off Pertrin's wounded leg. Pertrin awoke, screaming in terror. His body hurt, but that didn't prevent him from thrashing around in a feathered bed. 2 people tried their best to get his attention, gently attempting to lay him back down. Let go of me! Please! His breathing was deep and irregular. Dreg! Pertrin, calm down. A woman with blonde hair wrapped in a tight bun held his left arm. "You're safe." "What's gotten into him?" A stiff-looking, middle-aged man with a braided beard grabbed Bertrand's right arm forcefully. Bertrand, please! You're winding yourself up." After a few moments of dwindling panic, Bertrand noticed that he was inside the church. Blinding sunshine streamed through a line of tall windows. Dreg nowhere in sight. Just a few other beds with wounded people looking concerned. He did not know who the bearded man was, but he knew the woman quite well. "Haley!" he exclaimed, bringing her in for a tight hug. "Bertrand," she grunted, peeling herself away. "Too rough. Sorry, It was then he felt it. A gnawing pain festering from his thigh. Lifting the covers, he saw why. A good portion of his right leg was missing. An intense nausea threatened to empty his already uneasy stomach. Oh gods. Must be quite the shock." The man stood up, nodding at the couple. "I am grievously sorry, but we couldn't save the whole appendage. I will give you two some time alone." With that, the doctor wandered over to a different bed, nudging a sleeping woman awake. Bertrand kept hold of Haley's hand. "What happened?" "After everything blew over yesterday, a recovery team was sent out to scout around, see if anybody lived. I was so scared. You didn't come home straight away like you said you would. And then when they found you unconscious with the festering leg wound..." She took a shaky breath. "They didn't think you'd make it. But you're alive!" Haley cried softly, leaning her head against her fiancé's shoulder. "You made it." Bertrand scanned the room, making sure no ghostly apparitions were lurking under beds or around pillars of the church. I guess I did." Though he should be happy, Bertrand couldn't quite shake off the striking realization that a lot of other men didn't. And if what he experienced wasn't merely a dream, Ike didn't make it either. "I guess I did,"